I'm Ed Malesky, and this is this year's Christmas ornament. And I have to say, usually I struggle every year with trying to come up with a new design, but this year I participated in the AAW's online symposium and looking at their instant gallery, and as those images flashed by, there was one that was similar to this, made out of a burl, but it gave me the idea of doing this. And there were a couple of things that really appealed to me. As soon as I saw it, I said, this is something I want to do this year. Because all you're really doing with this is turning a natural edged bowl, all right? And we're going to do them, we can do them out of either a branch, so you have the real natural edge with the bark around, or you can do it out of a piece of stock that you turn around and then do it the same way as you would do a natural edged piece. So what we have here, I'm calling these parasol Christmas ornaments, because that's kind of what they reminded me of. And then because with that as a concept, it said to me I needed to do a little different finial than I've done in the past, longer, skinnier, and with less ornamentation. And so I think that they turned out pretty well. I have one where I have a finial that has a ball at the top, and one where I just do it with a transition piece and a small element in there. But however you choose to do the finials, light and delicate, and doing the parasol part as part of a natural edged bowl, it's the exact same technique as if you were doing it as a big natural edge bowl. So if you learn to do these, you can step it up and do a real bowl. So let me talk a little bit about what we're going to use as the stock to start. As I said, you can do it out of a branch. So you can have a branch like this. Of course, if you're going to do it as natural edge, you want a smooth bark that's held on reasonably tight. So you would just cut this in lengths. Now, for the two that I have here, I have done them, I've started them basically as 3-inch diameter. So I look for 3-inch diameter branch, which is about like this, or I turned a piece of stock into a 3-inch cylinder, which was like this. Now you can cut this off to length with a hand saw. If you're not comfortable cutting something round on a bandsaw, for safety's sake, you should make a cradle if you're going to use your bandsaw that the round branch is in, and then cut it through and cut it so it round stock will tend to grab in the bandsaw. So you can either cut it with a handsaw to length, and then what I do is I turn it up on end, set it flat on the table, on the bandsaw table, and then run it through the bandsaw like that. That's safe as long as you keep your fingers well away from the blade, because you've got a solid flat surface down here that registers against the table. And then when I'm done, you got some potential blanks. And the other thing about the diameter is if you make it slightly larger than 3 inches like this, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in the shape of the parasol. The wider it is, it gives you a little bit more ability to flatten out this curve. This curve coming down is a little sharper, and that's because the natural curve of the branch was a little tighter here. In here, although the branch is about the same starting diameter, I was able to turn it down to give me a flatter trajectory. And some of the earlier ones that I did, I tried to maximize the branch shape, and there was, for lack of a better term, too much droop. And they look better if they're a little bit flatter. If you're wondering, can you do this not as a natural edge? Can you flip it around if this is derived from a natural edge bowl approach? Can you do it from a standard cut rim bowl approach? And the answer is yes, but there is not as much appeal. What you basically have is just the inverted bowl with this coming out from the top or from the bottom. I think one of the things here, by having this arc in here, as this, you can see more of the finial underneath. If I did this the same diameter as a flat bowl, then a lot of this is really hidden. So I tried them both from the beginning, and I decided pretty early on that no, I was going to stay with the natural edge design. All right, so let's get with it. Just like any natural edge bowl, putting on here, and let me, I can start with this. I want to make sure that I don't have any cracks. Of course, this is green. When I'm doing it out of wood I've turned out of my stash, that's pretty much dry. In either case, it doesn't really matter if it's wet. You turn it thin as you can so you don't get much cracking. It may warp a little bit, but it really doesn't matter. And I do have to say, just like all of the ornaments, for me, one of the really key things that you want to do is minimize weight so that they don't pull down on the branch on the Christmas tree. So having those walls as thin as possible is going to be important at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the center. Get a better pencil. Is find the center of this blank. And it's hard to find what is the center on this side to get what I want, but what I will do is I'll take a look at where about the middle is, and I'll give myself some reference here for what the middle part on this side is. And then I'm going to be adjusting to get my wings equal. All right, so let me bring up the tailstock. And I'm going to fix it here. And then I'm going to line it up with, it is pretty well lined up already, with the with that middle, lined up with the middle axis, just to get myself a place to start. And now what I'm going to do is adjust the distance this way or this way so I get these wings to be equal. If you see here, and I rotate this, you can see the wing on this side is farther away from my finger. And so that means I have to I'm going to keep this at the same point and then move that. So now that when I look at these corners, they're pretty close. I still need to move it a little bit. But it's also one of the reasons, there we go. See, they're all lined up now. It's also one of the reasons why I use the safety drive on this side and a live center that has a point. Now I'm captured between the 2 points. If I would have something like a step center over here or something, it'll be a little bit more difficult for me to move that to get the alignment the way I want. So now I've lined up the points, all right? So I'm feeling pretty confident with that, and I'm just going to begin to turn the bowl shape. So I'm using the standard bowl gouge for this, and I'm just going to start making my cuts. And what I'm going to be doing, when I start this cut, is I begin to watch what this shape is. As you saw on the finished pieces, this shape goes from here, because you're coming all the way to the end of the natural edge, to here, and so you can control what this profile looks like by what you do here. Now also keep in mind that what I'm going to do is have to create a tenon on this end. All right, so a tenon here is going to take some of this real estate, so I'm going to have to move this down. I'm hoping that this bark is robust enough to stay on, but if it's not, we'll make a barkless natural edge. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to get to the bottom of the bark. So that will give me that ultimate shape and where the end spot is that I have to turn to. So you see I still have more to do. I have a flat right here. Getting pretty close now. All right, just a little bit more here. Yeah. Okay, so I think I should be probably there. Yeah. Maybe Doc can do just a little bit more. But the basic thing is that this shape here obviously is not the shape that we want. So what I'm going to do, take one more refining cut here, and then I'm going to begin to form the tenon and make this shape the shape I want the parasol to be. So I'm going to make one more cut. Because I want to make this a little bit more of a finishing cut, I'm going to drop the handle and make that a little bit of a shear cut. All right, and now I'm going to begin to go back and make the tenon and then refine the shape. Now one thing about, as you know, with most of the Christmas ornaments I've done, I can't really rely on a full-size chuck. So I use a chuck with pin jaws. And in this case, not only am I going to hold this in that pin jaw chuck, but the size of this tenon is also going to be basically the place on which I put the top part of the ornament. So I am going to want, and you can see it here, that there is a little bit of a transition between the top of the parasol and the top here. And that is the diameter that I made the tenon. And if I had had the tenon wider, and then I went to put the top on, I'd have a real problem. So I want to get most of my finial stock is 3/4 inch. So at most, I want that tenon to be 3/4 inch or a little less. All right. So now I'm going to start with working on the tenon. The tenon doesn't have to be exceptionally long, but what I'm going to do is make a tenon that allows me to get the best shape that I want. All right. Here, this is obviously too hard to break. So now I'm going to start to refine that shape. I still have a sharper corner here than I want. So let me, actually I'm going to take that down quite a bit because I want to flatten out. Oh, I think I lost some bark. I want to flatten out that parasol. Alright, now let's see what that looks like. Okay, and let me go back and take one of these and say, how well does that match up? You can see that this is a steeper slope here than this one is, so maybe I'll go down just a little bit more. It does look like I lost all that bark in here. So now let me take it down just a little bit more, and then I'm going to refine that, the tenon. So just like in any kind of bowl, or actually any kind of turning, you always want fair curves. You don't want any angular breaks. You want a smooth flowing curve. Across the whole profile. So if I would look at this, you know, I can say, well, that looks pretty good, but I think that I'm going to do one more set of refining, and then we can get on to working on the tenon a little bit. I think this is too sharp profile break here. I need to get some more of that out of there. It's a little, like a little hump to me. All right, so I think that works for me. This is really green, so I would have to wet sand. I'm not going to sand it today. I'm just going to go ahead and finish doing the inside. But now comes that transition from the parasol into the base of the top. Now it's still a little wide for me, so I'm going to come and take that down a little bit more. And I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'm going to refine that. And I can come in with a parting tool. And there you can see that transition from the parasol to what will be the base of the cap. And I can use my skew. I have a different tool at home that I tend to use to give myself a little dovetail. Now, if you have the short pin jaws, this depth, you want to keep it so that it does not bottom out on the chuck body. However, the chuck I use has quite long jaws, and so I know that being held in here won't bottom out at all. All right, time to turn this around. Okay, I'm going to mount this. The chalk. And this should be lined up still. No, let me just. All right. Okay, we're in pretty good shape. So now I'm just going to excavate the bowl in. But one more thing, I can't go straight to a smooth bottom because just like I created a transition on the top to go from the top of the parasol onto the cap, I have to also create a flat in the very bottom. I do it as a little transition piece that gives you a place for the finial to seat into. And again, you can see right here, I've made a place where there's a little transition from the bottom, and then I can put the place to glue the finial onto. So I'm going to do a little excavation of the inside. And one of the things that I do, I usually start on a natural edge bowl like this. I'm starting in where I have more solid wood and then working my way out the feel for where that outside wing is. You want some pretty good lighting when you do this so you can see the shadow. So you can see I'm reasonably thin at the edge here on the drop part. I'm still losing more of this bark. And so that's a good starting spot. And now I'm going to excavate a little bit more and continue to go in. And again, because of the fact that I'm excavating from inside, I have to come in so I'm rubbing the bevel, so my handle is way over here when I do this. And I'm going to come in until I just hear that. Just hear a tick, and that gives me a place I know where I'm at. I'm going to rub the bevel. Do a little bit more. Pick up the cut. Alright, see where I am. This is one of the things that you're doing thin, so don't be afraid to stop it and keep on checking the thickness. So I have to go back in here, this is too thick. Okay. Still a little thicker in here than it is out here, so I need to come back and do a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more and then we'll move on. You can work on this to get them as thin as you want. That's a little better. I'll have to sand all that up now that the bark's gone. Okay, and as you see in here, I have a little bit of a transition. I'm going to reduce that a little bit. But that's going to be the point that I mount the finial on. Now, before I take that off, I want to create a starting divot for a drill. Okay, so I'm going to drill through so I can mount the finial on the bottom and the cap on the top.
What drill size is that?
This is 3/8. I often do a 1/2 inch for my ornaments, but that's been basically because I have to hollow through that hole, and there's no hollowing here, so 3/8 gives me a better chance at making this smaller, pretty fine, and I like that a little bit better. All right, I'm going to come back in and just clean up that fuzz by running a skew in here. And now I have a clean surface I'll be able to glue my finial to. I've got to do, if your bark is fresh and the branch is from the right time of year, usually the winter. You can get the bark to hang on. Other times of the year, in this particular case, it's not that this wood is so old, it's the fact that it was laying on the ground for the last 2 months. All right, and so since the bark is gone, you could take a marker and color that all. And you can challenge yourself. One of the things that I do at home is I'll have a light set up, and I'm from behind, and as I am taking this center part out, I'm looking at the light transmission and trying to get an even light color across there. So I'm in pretty good shape here. Now I have to jump over to the finial. So I'm going to make this finial about 4 inches long. So you can see on this one, it goes in there, so that's about right. I'll start with the rough and gouge. One of the things I like about these long jaws is I can put quite a bit of the stock in the jaws. If I was doing them just with pin jaws, I probably would have to bring up the tailstock to start. But if I take it easy, it's held pretty well. It doesn't vibrate too much. So just like in any finial that I've made for you in the past, I'm going to work on taking this down to the small diameter. Okay, so this diameter here isn't the final diameter of the finial. It's the diameter of the decoration at the bottom of the finial. So, come in here, make a V cut. Turn a little bead. And, just sand that edge a little bit. Now you can go through, definitely, I'm doing this for speed, you can do the whole Cindy Drozda process, sanding up through an amazing number of grits and taking all the time you need. I am doing this a little quick, so I would make another cut and then work myself back to where I had the flange, and now I'm going to taper down to the bottom of that V-cut. Okay? And as I've said in the past, many times, that the finial always looks thinner on the lathe than it does in real life. So I'm going to work at backing this up and making it thinner. A little thinner than I thought maybe I would want in the beginning, but it'll turn out better. So because when I'm using a gouge actually, or a parting or a spindle roughing gouge, I'm putting more force this way. As I get thin, that's problematic. So I would rather switch to a skew where the force is going with the fiber. And I'm putting less tangential stress. As you can see, I'm bringing up my finger underneath the support. I'm going to come back here and at least define where my onion will be. You can do this with a gouge. If you're more comfortable doing it that way. I have to say that's way big, so I'm going to take a lot of that off. Okay, still a little thick for me, but for the sake of time. Now, unlike my regular Christmas ornaments, I tend to put more of an element here. In this, I really want to think about this as the handle of the parasol, so I don't want much ornamentation in here. So I'm going to create just a small element, and then I'm going to come back here and create a bead. Okay? Move the tool rest back a bit. And now I'm going to make a transition to what'll be the base of the finial that'll go into the parasol. So this is usually just a cove. Okay, all right, now I want to make sure that I don't have any flats here. I do have a flat, so let me come back and finish that back to round. Okay, good. And now I want to create my tenon. Okay, and my standard way of measuring these kind of tenons is a 3/8 inch wrench. All right, now I'm going to part it off. And that will go into the base here. All right. So now I've got to turn the cap, and then I have to deal with this. So you can do it either way. You can make this the top and this the base. If you make this the top, give yourself a little dimple to start the screw on. And then begin to do the top. Now I'm going to not have it very, I don't want this top heavy at all. So I'm going to create a little longer cap than I do for a globe ornament. But here I want to continue that, the flow. Think about it as a parasol handle coming up the finial through the parasol and extending out the top. Okay. And now it's a matter of the same thing as before. You sand it just a hair. I'm going to part that off. Okay. And now I have to come back and take care of the top of this. Now, one of the things I can do for that is on this end, give myself a little bit more out here. Take this down. To 3/8 of an inch. And that becomes something I can mount this side on. And then, okay, so I brought up a cone center in here. And now this allows me to do some refining of this top a little bit. So depending on how much effort I want to put into this, I can measure this diameter with calipers and then come down and turn that transition to that. I can see that that 10 is very, very close right now, but I'm going to take a little bit more. And this does give you also a moment to sand this. Of course, when you're sanding it, you can only sand the solid part. You can take it easy on the wings, but you can't really get the same finish on the wings. Can't apply the same pressure, all right? And now all I really have to do is part this off. I don't want very much. I want a bare minimum transition. Okay, there it is. Because I had that 3/8 hole drilled through. All right. And now you just put the cap on, and there you have your piece. I'd finish this, I'd sand a little bit more after it's dry, apply some finish, either gloss or semi-gloss lacquer, and there you go, you have your ornament.